السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صباح الخير ومرحبا بكم جميعا حضورنا الكرام. أنا مرام الجرنازي، ويسعدني جدا أن أكون معكم في هذه الندوة الافتراضية المقدمة من شركة عنكبوت الليبي بالشراكة مع شركة باتشستاك، وتحت عنوان طبقات أمان ووردبريس، كيف تحمي موقعك. كما تم الإعلان مسبقا، سيتم تقديم هذه الندوة الافتراضية بالكامل باللغة الإنجليزية، وستتوفر الترجمة العربية في النسخة المسجلة سواء على قناتنا على يوتيوب أو على موقع الشركة الرسمي. So once again, welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. As we all know, WordPress is the most widely used content management system, empowering around 43% of active users globally. And at this scale, it naturally attracts a very high level of attention from security threats. In fact, recent security studies show us that thousands of new vulnerabilities are being disclosed within the WordPress ecosystem every year, and many of them affect both themes and plugins used by millions of active websites. This highlights a very important reality to all WordPress users, that while updates are essential, some security threats are often found in the time frame separating discovering a vulnerability and actually applying a fix to it. This is the reason why modern WordPress security is no longer relying on a single measure or a single tool to protect websites. It now uses a different approach called the multi-layered approach, where different security measures are combined to work together to help reduce risk in real time. This is where Patchstack plays a very critical role, as it introduces an active security layer working inside WordPress to help prevent malicious activities from targeting predefined vulnerabilities before they turn into a real damage. To guide us through our topic for today, please join me in welcoming our main speaker from Patchstack, the head of security, Néstor Angulo, who will be sharing both his expertise and practical insights on proactive WordPress security. Before we start, I would like to remind everyone that we will be having some time at the end of our presentation to address your questions. Please submit your questions in the dedicated Q&A section below the screen. You can submit your questions both in English and in Arabic, but we will be answering them in English. And by that, I will pass the floor to Néstor. Good morning, Néstor.
Good morning. Good morning, Maram. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. Let me share my presentation. Yes, one sec. Okay. Okay, sharing it right now. So here we are. Okay. Welcome, guys. Welcome, girls. Yeah, here we are for talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, you know, is a very trending topic right now, and it's also getting much importance in this world that is nowadays a little bit, let's say excited, right? So yeah, let's talk about how effectively protect our sites, especially WordPress sites. And let me introduce myself a little bit further. So I hold the CISSP certification, which is one of the golden standards in the industry. I worked in the past at Ugarte and Security as web security analyst and brand ambassador. Is where I gather so many first-hand experience on hack sites and so on. Also, I've been speaker in more than 30 WordCamps, national and international. And right now I'm acting as the head of security at Patchstack, where I'm very, I am all the day working with towards all the vulnerability lifecycle and so on. So what we are here, so reality in security, about security in WordPress, especially this is stats from 2025, is that we disclosed more than 10 key vulnerabilities only on 2025. In all time, we have more than 30 key, but you can see the pattern, right? 91% of them affects plugins, not the WordPress core itself, which sometimes have some of them, but WordPress itself is secure. We will talk about that later. So in the industry, we always apply some kind of average breach cost, especially talking about SMB, I mean, small and medium business e-commerce. So it's around 200 key dollars if you are finding into a breach. And the most worry number here is that the average in the industry is that you would take more than 200 days for detecting malware activity. So this is the common situation. So I will talk today more or less about what is the defense in depth or multi-layer model that Maram has introduced. We always tend to mention it as the Swiss cheese model because it's very easy to imagine in that way. I will talk to it later. So the 5 layers of WordPress security, the multi-layer security is applied along the whole industry, but especially on WordPress security, it will be simplifying just 5 layers for your ease. I will mention about real case, what happens, and it is a small e-commerce site. And also I will just share with you some concrete actions you can take this week. Before going further, I would like to make a poll to see how how you all guys are working about cybersecurity. So the thing here is that I would like to know what is the best that describes your current WordPress security situation. So you can choose just one action. If you only trust on your hosting, you have a security plugin installed and you paid for it, or if you really are actually applying multi-layer protection, or you are not really sure what you have. It will be great to know what you are doing actually, so we can test a little bit how is the feeling in the audience, right? Personally, I normally find that the people normally trust on a hosting provider or they have a security plugin. So nowadays, I would say that the security is in everybody top of mind. But the thing is that they don't really know how to effectively apply in their sites, right? We will talk about this single solution way a little bit later. I think it's, I don't know if it is already, if all the audience has already answered. It would be okay if we can see the numbers right now, or if nobody if nobody voted, it's
Yes,
okay. But
we have 2 who voted. I'm not sure what I
only
have.
2.
And 1,
Okay.
I only trust my hosting.
Yeah, that's pretty classic. I will say that it's a very basic level. So yeah, let's elevate that. So we can continue. Let me go for that. So yeah, I will ask you to take a long breath because I'm gonna show you what happens if you get your site hacked. Okay, so these are very real cases. So, for example, you start seeing that there is some administrators popping up in your site. So you can see here that there is an admin, no email administrator. So that's super dangerous. Okay, the photo helps a lot, but also there are some others strange admins that you haven't added. So this is very classic. This is one of my favorites. Your post is starting to change. You know there were a post that says something, but after some time you check it and you will see that the title and the content has changed, hacked by Bala Sniper, and the content is here. But the funny thing in this one is that I found that there was a hacker that hacked a previous hack post. So it was kind of a battle between hackers, right? So you can see that the new revision was hacked by General, and the General one just replaced the previous hack post. Was super fun to find back in the time. you can find that your homepage also looks less quite different, just with some politicals or social claimings and so on. This is very classic. You just get into your website or your users get in and it's totally different. Or maybe people starts asking you if you got into the drugs market because there is kind of a free shipping Viagra somewhere. Or if you are more technical and you get a little bit more into the WordPress structure, you start to see, for example, in the plugins folder, there is some strange plugins, right? For example, this one is pretty concerning because there is no Joomla anything related in WordPress, right? They are competitors. So if you get into the Joomla plugin, for example, you can see there is an Akismet, and if you are more or less you have some expertise on WordPress, you remember that Akismet is a real plugin in WordPress, but it's a kind of a bundle into the WordPress initial installation. But the thing is, there is a malware trying to mimic a Akismet plugin, which is actually malicious, right? I'm not going to open these files, but this is only just to show that we should be careful about what is in the files side, not only about using the administrator. You can find yourself that your account has been suspended, or even Google is warning about your site, or even, for example, it was more in the past. I don't know if it is this in the same way right now, but if your domain has been hacked and Google realizes it, normally they add some kind of tag next to it saying this site may be hacked. Or for example, if you are running ads, you can find your ads disapproved because of malicious and unwanted malware at some point, or maybe you get into your site, you will find yourself that you are giving away an iPad or something like that for stupid questions, or an iPhone or something like that. This is clearly malware as well. Or before getting into your website, it is asking you for allowing notifications and doing things in your site. This is, if it is not intended, really intended for you, your site, is clearly malicious as well because it gets control over your browser. Or in the worst case scenario, you can find yourself into a ransomware scenario. You have to pay for a key for decrypt your information in the database and so on. Or maybe in the even worst and more scenarios that the police suddenly breaks into your home. And this is not a joke, that happens. So yeah, you've been hacked. This is, let's say, a quick review what happened if you just get hacked. This is one of the quotes I normally put everywhere because I think it shows pretty well how we feel in this matter about cybersecurity. This guy who is from a company nobody knows, Cisco, right? It could be one of the most important companies in network protection in the world. So he's saying that there is two types of company, right? Those that have been hacked and those who don't yet know they have been hacked, right? Okay, let's talk about a little bit about cybersecurity itself. So when we talk about cybersecurity, security analyst, security itself in WordPress scenario, in this case, or even, for example, if we are not talking about WordPress, but there is a hosting company and you have a VPS or you have an account and it has been hacked and so on. What this security team does, right? So, and security information means that there is information and we have to care about that. But we care in three specific fields. It is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? It's the CIA triad, as we call normally. And yeah, it can be resumed in something like, okay, show what matters to the person who is authorized for that and be available when it is needed, right? That's the point of the cybersecurity or security over information. There is a triad, which is totally the opposite, right? So for confidentiality, you have the disclosure. Against integrity, you have alteration. And against availability, you have destruction, right? This is one of the slides I love the most to talk in this kind of presentations because people are not very aware of this. Yeah, you have a site, you have a responsibility, right, of being online, and you start taking information like, for example, newsletter, and you need subscribers, or you have e-commerce, you need information for payments and so on, right? So what happens if you get hacked, right? Normally, the owner of the site just get fined. It is the main responsible or liable person, right? So for that, we apply in cybersecurity two important terms, that is due diligence and due care. In order to show that there is a hack or there is a breach or something like that, and you are not responsible of it, you have to show effectively that you have applied due diligence. I mean, you proactively try to identify weak points, you proactively stay plan, investigate where your sensitive information are, your information is well encrypted, and so on. This is due diligence, and due care is all the single actions to demonstrate that it's due diligence. Why is this important? Because if you are going to set up an e-commerce place, this has to be in the top of your mind because you are dealing with sensitive information. And if there is a breach, if there is a leak of information from your website out of your control, and you are the main controller of it, you can be fined unless you demonstrate a proper due diligence, or what we call prudent man law, which is something like, okay, what a prudent person does normally, okay? And you also not only identify things, but also took actions. This is important because it could save a lot of nightmares in the future. So when we talk about cybersecurity and applying towards a WordPress site, we normally separate which measures you will apply in two parts, right? Or in two sides. Let's say one is reactive and the other one is proactive. The reactive one are those actions that we take when bad things already have happened, right? So at this moment, you identify that something bad happened over your site. You have to respond, and what your goal is pain mitigation. You have to mitigate the damage, right? On the other side, you can be proactive instead of take action whenever something bad happens. You can just go directly before anything bad happens. And this is risk mitigation. Why is risk mitigation? Because 100% of security doesn't exist and never will be. Okay, this is something that we have to put very like a written in stone in our minds. Security won't be 100% effective ever, right? So what we have to be is more into the proactive way to avoid the reactive actions. The more proactive we are, the less reactive we have to be, right? So the more analysis, monitoring, and actions we take in that way, the better. So yeah, what's the regular way of people that doesn't understand too much about cybersecurity or doesn't know too much, or they feel a little bit overwhelmed about this field? Is in their minds, right? The single solution. They want a silver bullet to fulfill about security, right? So they feel that security is something like a door with a lock, and that's all, right? I have SSL, for example, but I always ask, okay, what happened then? Even if you have the SSL or TLS, what happened if there is a plugin vulnerability? Right. So I always take tell the joke that if you have SSL or TLS, which encrypts the communications between an actor and your server or your website, so this communication can't be listened, is encrypted. But what happens if the actor is a bad actor? So it will be hacking your site securely, right? So yeah, I have SSL is one part of it. My hosting has a firewall. This is another quote I normally hear here. So I always ask us as well, what if they hack your password? So, okay, you have a firewall, you have SSL, but is your password really strong? Or another one, I update every time, all the time, WordPress and plugins and so on. Yeah, but what happens if you update it and there is a malware in the update or in the WordPress itself, right? Yeah, this is the meme I normally show to everybody. That people normally what people normally understands about security, right? So normally, if you find to be a site owner and there is a compromised site with a lot of things, so let's just put a security plugin. That's the silver bullet that people just believe on, right? Instead of that, I will love to present more about the Swiss cheese model, which is more about a multi-layer protection, right? As you can infer from my previous comments. Yeah, it's not on one thing, it's several things. It's a multi-layer protection system, right? So it's used in aviation, in medicines, and now in web security, right? So we have cyber threats in the left coming in, and there is 5 layers of protections. So if any of those holes align and allows to a cyber threat to get through some of the layers, we can trust that any of the rest of the layers will block that threat. Of course, as I mentioned before, 100% of security effective doesn't exist. So it could happen that all the layers, holes, or weaknesses aligns to allow a cyber threat to go through and hack your site. But this is what we want to mitigate or reduce as maximum as possible, right? This quote is interesting for me, right? So security is not about perfection to minimize to 0% of probability of risk of being hacked. It's about making it and the attacks the most expensive possible, right? So if they want to hack your site, they have to implement a lot of things and also pay a lot of things to do it, right? So let's introduce the 5 WordPress security layers here, right? So the very first layer is the infrastructure. It's where the hosting belongs, the networks, network security, backups, and so on. There is a second layer, which is the application we are using, which is WordPress in this case. So WordPress core and configuration of the WordPress core itself lays here. There's a layer 3, which is the code, the code that is not in control by the hosting or the WordPress core, which is the plugin themes and dependencies on them, right? After that, we have the access. So to access your site, we have the users, password, permissions, API access keys, and these kind of things. And then there is a 5th layer we call detection. So there is something that should be logging or at least overseeing a little bit what is going on in your system. So let's talk about the very first layer, infrastructure, which is probably the most interesting for Libyan Spider, which is a hosting company. So here, what is related to is if they deploy or not a firewall that blocks any kind of attack before they arrive in your site. So if there is an attacker that tries to access to the server where our site is located, so that's a responsibility of the hosting provider. If you have a CDN, if there is an attack from outside instead of getting from inside, CDN and security headers can help a lot here because of the distribution. Using CDN distributes the code around the globe and so on, and also security headers add some kind of protection. And at the end of the day, the backups, which are your best friends, because whenever you have a bad day, you always have the backups. But the problem is that you have to test them, right? So concrete actions you can take in this layer. If you are technical, you can review WAF rules. If you have a specific WAF or access to the WAF that is deployed for your WordPress. If it is WordPress specific, it is better. If it is a general one, it's what we call gross grain, right? So it blocks the most typical or WASP top 10 threads, but that's all, right? And configure the security headers. That's something that is important. If you are not non-technical, as you're hosting, for example, about protections, and this is important for me, request a backup restore demo. So it's not only that your hosting provider or whoever is doing it makes backups, it's also that you should test it. Because what happens, happened a lot back at the time when I was a security analyst, is that, hey, I have a backup. Don't worry, I can restore my website. Oh shit, the backup is corrupted, right? So that's something that happens. So yeah, one of the most important part from the layer one is that the infrastructure blocks 40 to 50% of the automated attacks. So we have to trust on it. Having a trustful hosting where our site is hosted is paramount. One word about security liability. So the problem is that this looks like very well on the paper, but the problem comes whenever there is a hack, right? When there is a hack and there is a external authority that comes over our case and say, okay, you will be fine with 200 key of dollars because there was a leak or there was a breach. Who has the responsibility, right? So normally we will try to, throw the ball into the other's roof. That's why I mentioned in the very beginning that you have to demonstrate due diligence and you care, but also we have to take very into account that it's your liability as a site owner, the application, the data, and the security of the site. But it's the hosting provider, then what is the lies behind, right? So the whole network, hardware, operating system, virtualization, security. It depends on the product you acquire. This is not written in stone, but this is something that you have to consider, right? So as you can see on the right, everything that is in top of the ground level, and if you build a house, that house is your responsibility. What is lies beneath, that is the city, let's say, services, is the hosting provider or other entities liability. Okay, another word about backups. Backups has the same problem as the Back to the Future film. I don't know if you girls has viewed this film, but yeah, the problem here is, okay, I can apply a backup, but I don't know how much time I have to go back in the time to find a clean version of what I want, but also what happened after that time. I'm gonna restore, I will lose it. So you're gonna change the future, right? So this is pretty important. Every time you hear about backups, remember Back to the Future film and apply the same principles. Okay, dokie. Let's go to the layer 2 application or WordPress itself. This is, very easy, let's say. So let's keep the WordPress updated, and updates are your friends. I will mention about updates a little bit after this. Secure your BP config PHP configuration. This is important. Normally in the structure of WordPress, you can tweak your permissions in the files. So BP config PHP files shouldn't be able to be changed by any person or any entity that is not you, right? So applying a specific permissions over it, it will help. Like for example, 444 for the BP config PHP, and then apply the permissions over the rest of the folders. So BP PP admin and PP includes should have 644, something like that, or 755, depending on the case, on the hosting provider, but never 777. This means 777 means that anyone can change anything there, right? 644 means that only the owner can change things there and the rest can read, and 755 the same, more or less. So actions you can take if you are more or less technical, you can disallow file edits or force SSL admin to force that the WordPress goes through SSL. This is normally not needed because hosting providers already apply this or tweak this in the WordPress installations. But if you find yourself that you are setting up manually one of them, this is one of the things you have to do at some point. And then if you are not non-technical, or even if you are technical as well, I will say that enabling auto updates in settings, that's important, right? So let's say that WordPress is secure by default. It's just configuration that makes it the different. So what about updates? My take is that it's recommended to updates always. When I mean always is every moment you see there that annoying icon in the top, go for it. Obviously, there are some strategies, depending on your case. Maybe you have a very a site that is super famous that needs to be online always, and it's critical, whatever. So you can apply different strategies for that. Or even, for example, you have a plugin and you don't want to update it because it will take out any kind of modifications, which is not good. Normally, it's better to do it in the good way. You can apply only security fixes if they are in the release notes. I always put here, be careful, because some people just check the release notes and see, okay, there is a security fix, so I will apply this in this update. But if there is not, I'm not going to. The problem and why I put here be careful is because there is a lot of people, a lot of vendors out there that hides in the release notes if they are applying any kind of security fixes, because any kind of, I don't know, feeling bad about having security issue, or they don't want to lose the trust of the users or something like that. So it's not mandatory to put in the release note that you are covering any vulnerability you found in your code. So that's why I put here, be careful, not believe on this too much. I will talk later on that this is something that will change in the future, because there are some regulations coming that makes mandatory if there is any kind of vulnerability or security fix, you have to put it in the changelog. You can update on staging and then move to production, or do a backup first before updating. This is something I would really, really recommend if you are concerned about updating your site, because it could have any kind of incompatibility and get your site off. Do a backup first. So I always tell to people that I feel in this way when I applying updates without a backup. So yes, please apply backups first. Do a backup first and then apply updates. For me, this is an equation you have to have in top of your mind. Any cost of a web down because of an update, because of the update time, because of an incompatibility, because there is a problem with one of the plugins you updated or something like that, is always less than any cost of a web hack because you didn't update it on time. Change my mind. Okay? Any cost of a web down is always less than any cost of web hack. So whenever someone says, I'm not going to update because I don't want my site to get down, tell that person, okay, and if it gets hacked because you don't update, you will have to pay a lot of money. We will see in the next slides. So yeah, let's say that let's go for the layer 3, which is the Achilles heel, the plugins. So imagine that plugins are made by teams, by human teams, or even, for example, blind AI agents. I always say blind because they do what we ask for, but the code that the AI agents output not always are optimal, secure, and so on, right? So yeah, we are having an infrastructure layer one. We have then on top the WordPress with some configuration that depends at some point on human factor. And then we have like a bazaar with all the plugins we want to install, right? And this every single plugin depends on a human team that can be run or can fail, right? So let's talk that in 2025, the 91%, as I mentioned before, 91% of the vulnerability comes from plugins. I don't trust too much on this number. It's the 23 average plugins per site. I would say that it's a little bit more. But yeah, imagine that you have 23 human teams that develop human and AI agents pulling code into your site. So you have to trust on any of them and in any of the libraries they are using, each of them, right? So there's a trust chain that is very long. Always have this in mind as well. So for the vulnerability disclosure in 2025, still the 47% of them are not fixed. So almost the half of the vulnerabilities found last year has not been fixed. This is one of the graphs showing about the most common security vulnerabilities. You can find into the vulnerability databases. The number one by far normally is cross-site scripting, which means you get into your site and immediately you just get redirected to other, or you get like this kind of bot checking that allows you to access to the Chrome, or shows you this kind of poll that if you answer this stupid question, you just win an iPad. This kind of thing is the cross-site scripting, right? Other vulnerabilities, in general, broken access control, that's pretty important, right? So we found that there is a lot of hack sites coming because you are reusing, or the users are reusing their credentials, right? Or the authentication system is not strong enough, these kind of things. You can find this kind of graphs in patchstack.com/database/statistics/WordPress. You can find there, and you can order by month or even by year and so on. So what to do? So, okay, you show us that something bad could happen. You show us that the main problem is plugins. So what I should do at this point, right? I will say that it's apply due diligence. And this is the process. Okay, let's check plugin by plugin. Before installing, or even if you have them installed right now, go with plugin by plugin. First, last update, it was more than 6 months. It's okay. If it is less, it is more than a year, raise a red flag in your mind. It doesn't mean that you have to remove it, but it's a red flag, okay? No one updated it in the last year, let's say. It has more than 10,000 active styles. It's okay because it has more scrutiny, more people are using it. So it's easy if there is a problem that people notice it faster. It is less than one key, another red flag. No, there is not enough eyes on the code. So yeah, you're taking a risk there. It is the plugin. Is it in a vulnerability database? Any of them? You can check in the part of the Patchstack. You can go to patchstack.com/database and put there the name of the plugin, and there you can see if there is a vulnerability and if it has been fixed or not, or if there is a rapid mitigation or whatever, right? And also, it's important to check if the developer of that plugin is active in support. If it is not active, or it's not answering in time, let's say, another red flag, okay? Spend 2 minutes, more or less, on this check in each of the plugins you have installed or before getting installed. This is due diligence. What is due care? So how I can manage about how I can manage plugins in my sites, right? So there are 3 strategies. One of them is a regular scanning. If you are using any kind of security plugin that does these kind of things, just manual, automated, or even doing this due diligence I mentioned before. The more you do, the better. Save updates. Depending on your site, if your site is very informal, you don't mind if it gets down for a while or something like that. This is not very important for you. But if you have a business and you need high and you need the uptime is 100% much online at the most time because it's critical for your business and so on. Try to use staging, then test, and then go to production schema. And also, and the most important thing, apply some kind of plugin or company that applies any kind of virtual patching. In the case of Patchstack, is called rapid mitigation. Because it is the fastest way of protecting your site whenever there is a vulnerability in a plugin, because the virtual patching of the rapid mitigation is when there is a vulnerability that is discovered, these companies just deploy some rules over your site to block any kind of attempt to leverage that vulnerability. Meanwhile, the patch is ready, right? So imagine that you have a vulnerability in your plugin. The vulnerability is known and is out in the market. So that time until the company realizes it, makes the patch, and validate it, there is normally couple of days because you are a human. Even if it is AI agents, there is a time, right? So virtual patching is the fastest way of protecting. Meanwhile, there is a patch, a regular patch for that. It's a firewall level blocking. So yeah, let's say that any kind of plugin that is vulnerable or might be vulnerable is an open window in your house. Okay, so I would say that there is a quiz here. Quiz, that one, yeah, exactly. Yeah, imagine that a critical vulnerability has been discovered in a plugin you use. The official patch will be released in 3 days. What you will do? This is a single choice quiz, so there is several, or let's say a couple of actions that could be applied. So one of them is deactivate it immediately. Might break the site if you deactivate something that is your site is hardly depending on. Wait for official patch to update. Just let it go, and the auto update will do its magic. Look for a temporary protection, virtual patch or something like that, or do nothing and drink your coffee. Just forget about that. I think it's pretty clear what we are going to choose here, but there's some caveats, let's say. So I will give just a couple of seconds more. I don't know if you, Madam, can give me some results.
Yes, we have 2 people who said that we deactivate it immediately. One participant voted for look for temporary protection, like virtual patching, for example.
Yeah, I would say that the virtual patch will be the best way, right? But it's not everybody has a company or a plugin that does this kind of things over your site, right? So deactivating it's probably, let's say, the most safest way, but the problem is that you can break your site, right? So what is not recommended for sure is just wait or stay there, independing also, of course, of the how hard is that vulnerability. Okay, that's vulnerability itself, layer 3. Let's go for the layer 4. We have 2 more. Okay, so this and the other one, access control. This is probably the most famous one, the most literate you have out there to talk about, which is strong passwords, second factor authentication, the principle of least privilege, which I think everybody knows, but no one's applied properly. It's not only about applying least privilege, I mean, giving the privilege to the person who will access that they really need. It's also about maintenance, because sometimes there is a grid of permissions issue. So maybe you can enable some permissions to that person eventually for a thing that they need to do, but you have to take care of taking out those privileges after that. So whenever you give more privilege or increase privileges for any user, any application or whatever, you have to apply some kind of time frame for that, not forever, right? So the grid permissions issue is a reality with the least privilege. It's okay applying in the very first time, but then you have to maintain it. Logging at time limits, this is something that probably will finally go in the WordPress core. At this moment, it is not, but hopefully at some point they will add some kind of limiting by default, some kind of, okay, it's not possible that you try, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times the same password, different password, or something like that. To get in, you should have some kind of temporal banning or something like that, right? Okay, let's give some notes here. Okay, change quick password today. This is something that if you haven't, change it. And also about cycling passwords, I would say this is not really needed to cycle the password very often, but at least change from time to time, okay? Of course, you should go for over 8 characters, alphanumeric, not only characters, regular characters. I don't know in Arabic how it works, but if you go for English, similar English-like languages and so on, try to use alphanumeric and more than 8 characters. If you can go for 14 characters, the better. Normally people use password managers, right? So you are not going to remember it, so you don't care about the number of characters. Just go for 15, 16, 18 characters. You're not going to remember it anyway, so it's okay. But the strong passwords goes over 12 or 14, I don't remember exactly, but at least the minimum is 8. Enable two-factor authentication and not apply second-factor authentication. Don't use the methodology of second-factor authentication of the short message, the SMS, because it's very weak. Use it using an application, using recovery numbers or recovery code, or passkeys and these kind of things. And also important review admin roles. Not every person needs to be admin. Not even the admin needs to be admin, because sometimes the admin are not going to do admin actions. So it's okay also having like an admin user that you only use for specific admin actions, and meanwhile you use another user which has your roles applied, or at least adapted to your role, right? Keep in mind that 80% of the hacks come from stolen or weak credentials. 80%. Okay, this is easier. You have in mind that hacking a website or hacking a server is this kind of, hacker in a basement just with a hoodie and with a lot of displays and trying a lot of super advanced methodologies to hack the system. The reality is that it's super cheap and super easy just to find up a database of credentials leak there in internet and test it. That's all. So the 80% of the hacks coming from there. Okay, so yeah, keep in mind that we have been talking about vulnerability code, but it doesn't matter if your password is just password 123 or admin 123 or any of those. I recommend to you guys to go to wikipedia.com/ I think it's 100,000 most used passwords or something like that, right? So there you have a long list of classical or most used passwords, right? So if yours is not on list in that list, but looks like or is pretty similar to any of those, change it. Okay, let's go for this layer 5, and after this, we will have another poll. Okay, detection response. If all the layers previously failed, yeah, we have, or we should have, like kind of overseeing process that detect and can respond whenever there is a problem, right? So in the last IBM report about cybersecurity in the industry, it was highlighted that the average to detect a hack is 241. It's a little bit lower than the 2021 report. It was 280, 87, I think. So yeah, we are reducing the time of the average. So we are doing good things on here, but we have to do more. So what it means in WordPress, you should install some kind of login or audit plugin. This audit plugin will log every action, what happened, when, and who did that, right? This also will help a lot if there is an issue, if there is a fine, if there is a leak or a breach or something like that, and you have to demonstrate you care and due diligence. Having a login plugin is a must, because the very first thing that these authorities will ask to you is a log of what happened in your site in the last, I don't know, 60 months or whatever is the timestamp. This is important. Okay, so audit plugins in your site. Automated alerts, if you have a plugin that sends to you alerts and these kind of things, yeah, this is important. Have a response plan. Why not? Let's sit and think, okay, what will happen if I get my website hacked? What I should do, right? So why not just spend 1 hour or less than 1 hour researching, asking Cloud, ChatGPT, or whoever the tool you use, or investigating in internet, or just thinking by yourself. What would you do in the case you get a security event, right? Normally, as I mentioned, hosting providers could work a lot or could help a lot in this case. So I would say that the very first situation, if you identify something bad, is get in touch with your hosting provider. In this case, Libyan Spider support system. So get in touch with them, and after that, try to escalate in the if it is not possible to be solved by the support system, right? But think about the response plans. Think just a little bit on what you should do if something bad happens. So enable login, configure alerts, and have a plan. You can protect what you can see. That's a maximum. That's a quote that's should be written in every single company, right? So you can apply this even for marketing, right? You can't grow if you don't measure, right? But the same, you can protect you if you don't see what happened. And this is something that we always say. Hope is not an strategy. Monitoring is, okay? So we should monitor or log or whatever, but not just believe that nothing will happen. Okay, there is another poll, a second poll, I think, here. Okay, so yeah, what worries you the most about WordPress security or WordPress plugin security? Not knowing if my plugins are safe. Updating might break my site. I don't have time to manage this. This is pretty common, and I don't know. I don't know where to start. So yeah, let's give some seconds to choose the best scenario that identifies you. I would say that not having time, or even not not knowing or not want to get into this because sounds pretty dark and magic, like cybersecurity is, or security itself, is one of the most common. Let's see what they say. Do we have some responses?
Yes, we do. Let me share them.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So whoever said about the updating, you know what I think about updating. So I would say that this is something that could be concerning in your mind, but ask to your hosting provider if they can grant you any kind of staging place, something like that. You can test where you can test if the update will break your site. But yeah, mainly just I understand that people doesn't have time or they didn't know where to start. Okay, so that's why this webinar is important, because can help you and give you some of the some tools, some tips. Let's go for a real case. It's just very quick, and after that, I will share with you some real actions items you have to follow after this webinar, right? So what happened in this case? This is has been let's say that the ciphers and the numbers has been tweaked to not to protect the privacy of the customer. But yeah, there is a payment plugin compromised thing, right? So there is a setup with an e-commerce with WooCommerce, pretty common there. 100K visits per month, 500 products. Let's say a small, medium e-commerce. And there is a popular plugin that is more than 100K plus installs that have been hacked. And you install it in the moment you update it. And the malware that was in the plugin was a backdoor with a credit card skimmer. The credit card skimmer, basically what it does is to redirect. Whenever there is a payment form, it redirects the information, it goes through, but also gets logged and sent to an attacker, right? Or to a bad actor, right? So the process seems to be going properly, but suddenly the payments information is sent to another other persons. Also, there is another way of a skimmer here that usually happens is that if you are using, for example, PayPal or these kind of things, you configure your PayPal email or identificator, and then the bad actors change it. So any charge that goes towards that identificator in PayPal goes, in fact, to the attacker instead of the site owner, right? So in this was the case, and this is the disaster timeline because they didn't have a layer protection. So on Monday, malware installed via update. So the plugin was compromised, and in the moment it was updated, the malware get into the site. It seems to be legit. Once the customers report the strange charge in the cards, on Friday you find out via Twitter or X, whatever I always tend to say Twitter because I don't like X name. You find out that someone is claiming about it and pointing on you. On Sunday, when you realize that it's something that you have to do, try to clean, but you don't know if it has been cleaned because you are not an expert in that. But also, as I mentioned in the backups, if you apply a backup, you don't know where or when this malware comes. In this case, if you apply a backup, you don't do anything because in the moment you apply a backup and apply updates again, you get the malware again, right? So after 2 weeks, they needed to hire a forensic and pay 15 keys, right? So the result is more than 14 days of exposure, more than 50 key, of course, not only because of the forensic, but also they needed to pay a fine to the persons who get charged in their credit cards. Through 3 big clients lost, you lost a lot of money and so on. Also, your reputation is severely damaged. And yeah, a lot of time urgently on Sunday even, right? Okay, what happened if there were a layer defense, right? So on Monday, 2 p.m., there is a malware reported to a company who does this kind of report validation and mitigation with rapid mitigation or virtual patching. On Monday, 6 p.m., in your side that you have this company on your side protecting in that way the layer 5, which is the monitoring detects anomalies, and the 8 p.m. layer 3, which is the plugin layer blocks, and it's blocked by a virtual patch or rapid mitigation. And on Tuesday, when you realize this, you review it and you change the passwords. That's all. On Thursday, you change the password because you still don't know what happened with the problem. You see that there is a problem, but you change the password because it's the very first thing you do normally when there is a security incident. But you don't know still what happened, right? You know that there is something going on, and the virtual patching are blocking the some attacks. On Thursday, there is a deploy an official patch. So from Monday 2 p.m. to Thursday, that time you are vulnerable. But if you have a company with you have a multi-layer defense, in this case, a monitoring process, you have virtual patching, rapid mitigation, you have a company that also validates and warns you about these kind of things, and you apply auto updates in those 4 days, even you being exposed, you don't have any problem. So six hours exposure. Well, okay, 6 hours in the Monday because of until virtual patch is deployed. But yeah, you are exposed from Monday to Thursday. Zero damage, zero clients affected. You don't have to do anything. Just check and talk. Okie dokie. This week, what you have to do if you haven't. The very first thing after this webinar, enable two-factor authentication if you haven't. Don't use SMS. Change weak passwords. Go for a 12, 14 characters. If you are using a password manager, you are not going to remember it, so who cares? Go for the strongest. If the lowest number of characters, the easiest to break. And also check that you are doing backups and test. Priority, do this week or next week. Review plugins. Go plugin by plugin, checking what I did, what I commented to you, right? The due diligence checklist. If there's updates, if there are vulnerabilities, and so on. And enable basic login. Install any kind of audit plugin, but also check with your hosting provider if there is any kind of login happening into the hosting provider layer. In this month, set up a staging so you can test there or even run the updates there and try to set up the process of testing and staging and then go to production if it is possible, right? And implement continuous scanning using any kind of plugin and so on. But importantly, take some time to think what happened for a plan, right? What happened if something goes bad? What you should do? Because in the moment it happens, normally you will find yourself blocked and you will prefer to have something rehearsed before to understand what to do. Just a little note about what Patchstack helps here. So our works is about continuous monitoring, plugin monitoring. So we have a validation, naming. We follow the whole vulnerability life cycle. So we work towards the layer 3 with the virtual patching. In this case, we call it rapid mitigation, automatically applied on all our customers. And we are the largest vulnerability database, so it's very likely that we find the vulnerability before any others. And we have real-time alerts. So it's also happening in the layer 5. So just for finishing, no, there's a poll 3 here, sorry. Let's show the poll 3. I would love to know which layer you will implement or improve first after today. So the layer 1, the layer 3, the layer 4, or the layer 5. The layer 2, remember, is the WordPress 1, which requires a little bit more into technical things. If you are not technical, that could be more like auto-enable updates. But if you are technical, you can take several actions. Like, for example, even if you are not technical, you can apply at least a security plugin or something like that. Just keep in mind that having a security plugin in your site doesn't, I can say it, you can't rely on that, because the very first thing that malware does is tamper plugins, security plugins in your site, right? So even if your security plugin saying you don't have malware or these kind of things, it's possible that you have it, because the malware will tamper the scanners of the typical security scanners out there, and then therefore you will have a green whenever it is red. So installing a security plugin is important, also especially if they have any kind of hardening actions that you don't understand very well about, but at least they are doing, like hiding the README file, protecting the BP config PHP file, and these kind of things, right? But yeah, I will say for you, you will work on the layer 3, plugin scanning, okay, and in the layer 4, yeah, because I said the second factor authentication and password, but especially because it's the easiest, right? It's the part of the access which is under your control, so you can change it, right? That's great. I would recommend to go for the layer 5, at least with the audit plugin and the plan, okay? So yeah, for finishing, yes, just remembering this, the Swiss cheese model or multi-layer protection. As you can see, cyber threats coming from the left, pass through the infrastructure, then goes to the application, WordPress itself, then plugin, the access, and then there should be kind of last layer that detect these kind of things, or should. So you don't need to have a perfect layer. You just need to have several good enough layers that work together, right? So having a good hosting provider to rely on is paramount in security. The last thing I want to comment is that that is related with the European Union, is that there's new regulations coming about cybersecurity. So even if you are not interested on working on European Union, if you have a European Union customer, you have to comply with this. So it's something that you can't avoid. It's the same way as the GDPR, right? At this moment, Cyber Resilience Act is affecting WordPress. Is enforced right now since last year. I think it was December 2024. But it will start finding people on June of this year. But the only thing that is mandatory right now is have a BDP. BDP means you should place in your website some kind of link that shows clearly that if any person finds a vulnerability in your site, knows what to do. For example, you can just put a link there, something like, if you find a vulnerability, please send it up or send it over this email. Or if you hire services like, for example, Patchstack, you will have a BDP. So you will have a we will share with you a text that and the text says something like, if you find a vulnerability, just send it to Patchstack. Patchstack will validate it, process, and so on, and will let me know if it is a valid one and I can do something, right? So VDP is mandatory, and before June 2026, I mean, it's enforced right now, but they will start finding companies, even if they are not in European Union, but they have European customers. You can find yourself in this list. After that, there are some other things that are related with this Cyber Resilience Act, which is the obligation of separation of the security release notes, not only just one release notes. So it should be security and features. Also the SBOM, which is the software bill of materials, which is a list of dependencies you are using in your software. So the analogy will be something like if you are allergic to any kind of ingredient, you will love to know if the cake you are about to eat has this ingredient or not. So this SBON is the same. If we know that there is an ingredient that is conflictive in your software, I can take the risk or not of using it. Okay. So yeah, just take care. I mean, have this in mind. This will be probably more commented in the future. But yeah, for sure, this is something important because as it happened with the GDPR, probably would be adopted by several different countries in the world with the time. And yeah, as I always says, everybody needs a hacker. Hacker is a person who has a lot of curiosity and goes beyond what is established. And thanks to these hackers, we are evolving as humanity. So I would say that everybody needs a hacker. And thank you very much. And I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Néstor, for the presentation and for the all information you shared with us. Let's now move to the Q&A. We will start with the pre-submitted questions before the webinar, and meanwhile, any one with us today can drop their questions in the Q&A section, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with our first question as shown in the screen. One second. Okay. Okay, so does AI integration enhance website security or does it weaken it?
With the AI, there is a famous quote we tend to say, which is there is AI conundrum, right? So yeah, you can find a lot of attackers using AI, but the same AI tools can be used for defense your site, right? So it's kind of okay. You have a big robot and that you can get in and destroy a whole city, but there is a defender or an analyst that can get into another robot in the same size and defend it, right? So yeah, I would say that it's part of the nowadays situation. It's another tool, and yeah, can helps in both sides to enhance, but also to weaken it. What I am more concerned about is the overuse of AI, right? So overuse of AI in code generation, these kind of things at this moment, probably in the future not, but in this moment, I would say this more into weakening it.
Okay. Now, I believe we have another question, which is how can we ensure that there's no conflict between the hosting firewall and the WordPress firewall, the application level WAF?
How we can ensure? I mean, that's not possible, I would say, to ensure that that happen, right? So, as I mentioned before, several level WAF is more is less site related. It's more about general security measures. Is what we call gross grain defense, right? But the WAF you apply in the application level, I mean, the WAF you install in your WordPress application is specific for your WordPress application. So probably it has, or should be at least, it's an opportunity to that company that deploys that WAF into the application to apply specific rules that apply to that site, right? So it's kind of a fine grain. I would say that normally they don't overlap. Normally they apply some kind of gross grain to block the clearly malicious known attacks and so on from outside. Then the rest pass through and hits the website. And in the website, there is kind of a WAF that does the fine grain and apply specific rules that apply for that site. So it's more like a fine work. I would say that's the normal way or the normal situation.
Okay, perfect. I believe, let me check. We don't have any more question or Q&A. Thank you very much, Nestor. Thank you for your time and thank you for all the information you shared with us. and I believe we can switch back to Arabic now. شكرا جزيلا لكل حضورنا الكرام، شكرا لوقتكم ولاستماعكم. نأمل أن تكون هذه جلسة ذات فائدة عملية ونظرية بالنسبة إليكم. أيضا يظهر على الشاشة كل قنوات التواصل الرسمية مع شركة العنكبوت الليبي، ونحن متواجدون دائما للرد على أسئلتكم واستفساراتكم. بعد الانتهاء سيظهر نموذج لتقييم هذه الجلسة الافتراضية، وسنكون جدا سعداء بالاستماع إلى آرائكم وملاحظاتكم. على أن نلتقي قريبا في ندوة افتراضية قادمة، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bye, Nestor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How it was.
Thank you. Bye bye.